Today on the breakdown, two of your very, very favorite players of all time clash in a big cash game. It's Dan Jungleman Cates and Mariano, I'm a vlogger. Well, I don't even know his last name. I was going to make something up, but I decided at the end not to because I'm sensitive, I'm thoughtful, and I'm on board with keeping it real. So anyway, they're going to play a hand where Mariano has the bullets, and he's going to be in some tough spots here, man. It's like questionable and tough all the way through. And what do you do? What do you do when you have this great player who feels like he's coming at you, and you only have one pair? What do you even do? Well, we're going to get into it right now on the breakdown with Grant Dennison and Jonathan Levy.
You didn't want to give Mariano a last name? I can only think of one Mariano. I bet you can think of the same Mariano who's a famous Mariano.
Well, Mariano Rivera is the obvious one, right?
Yeah.
I think that's literally what I was going to say for his last name, and I was like, I don't know that that's his last name. And now that I realize it's very unlikely to be his last name because that's a different guy's last name.
That's a baseball player.
Yeah.
So he was good at baseball, apparently.
He was good at baseball. He's probably in the Hall of Fame.
This Mariano, though, I would guess is not as good at baseball as that Mariano, but probably better at poker.
Have you ever seen Mariano Rivera make a big turn call in the World Series in a big spot, big ICM spot?
The thing about him, he plays a little bit too tight, so it's hard. He doesn't have that much of a sample size, and he plays in a way that's like he doesn't want to show it off on stream so people can figure him out. So there's not enough for me to know. But this Mariano obviously loves being on stream.
I feel like one of the Mariano Rivera's biggest pros, though, as a player, he plays a little too tight, but he does such a good job engaging with the other players and stuff. It's not so obvious that he's not playing a large group of hands. It feels like he's involved all the time, even though he isn't, because he's chatting it up, he's talking stuff, he's pointing out what he's doing. It feels very thoughtful, and I don't know. It might be like pretty expert. He may make 2 Hall of Fames, is what I'm saying.
That is an interesting type of player that you. I know you were being facetious, but that's a real type of player. There's a guy in particular I play with in Portland who I think fits that bill pretty well. Who is always talking like he's a lot of action and is always encouraging a lot of action, and sometimes puts in a decent amount of action, but actual VPIP is quite low. Yeah, and I think the perception is that the VPIP is much higher, and that's an interesting guy to be. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, it's not an angle. It's just a general strategy, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's all. It just, you just don't want people to think that you're too tight so they don't call you when you have it, basically, right? That's all. Because, a lot of the players in some of the 5-5 type games of the world are going to call a lot on the river.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you get called by them because they're going to call you often relatively light, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a version of being a less explicit version and a less advanced version of being Andrew Roble, right? Where you're trying to basically be the player who plays the most sane, logical in the whole game of a bunch of insane people, and somehow pass by and people are okay with you doing that.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is, it's a real way to make money in poker, but I have no interest in it really. I don't want to have to try to cultivate that or be that guy. Although maybe at Roble's level, if I could do it at Roble's level, maybe that would be pretty good.
I mean, I feel a little bit like that guy, but I'm not trying to be that guy. I'm often very chatty at a table and stuff. Yeah. So it's not with any intention. I just am, not always, but often am a presence at the table, and so I think people assign me things in their heads that aren't necessarily true about me. But I'm not doing it for that purpose. I just like talking.
Yeah. I don't think that you're doing it as an overall strategy for sure.
Yeah, definitely not.
But you do get a little bit talky sometimes.
What? Are you? I feel like you just. Why don't you say what you really mean?
Annoying.
Come on.
Annoying sometimes.
Come
Is that
on.
what you wanted to hear? That's not what you wanted me to say?
You didn't mean that.
Of course I didn't mean that. No, I don't find you annoying, but I think some people probably do. That would be my guess.
Probably do, yeah.
Yeah.
There was this one time, Grant and I were at a final table together, and there was one other person at the final table who we kind of knew, not very well even. She was the girlfriend of someone who I knew a little bit and you knew a little bit. And you were sitting right next to her. And she was interesting and cool. And you guys were talking. And I was all the way across the table. And there was no one else at the table who was talking. And I was just listening to your conversations. And once in a while, like every 7 minutes, I just pipe up and say something as if I was part of the conversation from all the way across the table because I was so desperate for like an interesting conversation. I was so sad that you were both so far away. I still remember
I didn't remember that piece of it, but I mostly remember me having 5 blinds for most of the time and you having a lot of chips for most of the time and me doing better than you because of your 7-5 call off.
That's right. I called off with top pair and no kicker and got beat by top pair slightly better kicker. That was brutal. When the guy check shoved like 8 times the pot or something like that with a slightly better hand. Oh, so brutal. Anyway.
Yeah. He then won his 7th ring or something like that.
Whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a good player. Anyway, let's talk about some other good players, Mariano and Jungleman, who get to be in the Roble seat, basically, in this game. It's not as big of a game as Roble plays, 25-50 game, but the other players are not good. That's what you're looking for.
Not. It's Hustler Casino Live. The other players are almost never good. I mean,
yeah,
that's just the deal.
So before we get to the hand, let's talk about Phineas Dickman and Ryan's 7723. Multiple Ryans, I suppose. Maybe 7,723. They suggested it on Discord. Discord is a place you could suggest hands. It's a place you can talk about polka. We just created a breakdown section in our Discord. We've also now created a table talk section. The first table talk is out now. Talk about that a little bit.
Table Talk is a new show. We think you're going to like Table Talk too. Yeah.
It's a YouTube show and a podcast. It's going to be 10 minutes or less, basically, most of the time. The first one is just a hand history of me that I played. It's Jonathan and I talking as if we're on break at a poker tournament, essentially. Yeah. Like it's capturing that conversational style about hand histories, and we might talk about other things too in Table Talk.
But we're definitely going to talk a bunch of hand history. So it's going to be like a hand Grant played that he thought was interesting, or has a question about, or what just thought was a wild thing happened or is an interesting spot. And ditto, like I'll do some as well from my end, and then possibly even your hands. If you guys want to send in an interesting hand, we're happy to do that on Table Talk as well. So feel free to do that in Discord. We have a Table Talk section as well.
Yeah, it's still new, and I was thinking, maybe when we have people send in their hands, we could actually have them on the show to describe the hand to us. Instead of just us describing the hand like we do on the breakdown. We can actually have them tell us what happened in their thought process on Table Talk with the poker guys.
I don't hate it. Well, we'll kick that around later. But anyway, we think you guys are really going to like it. It's sort of the opposite of this podcast in that this is, a 45-minute. We really, really go deep in everything and fuck around a lot. It's more like we get right to it and we have like a shorter conversation because it's like we're on break. It's the way we actually talk about hands when we're talking to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you want to hear how Jonathan and I talk hands, that's the one. I mean, I know you hear how we talk about how other people play hands because you listen to this podcast, but it's a different animal, and you'll see that once you listen to Table Talk. Yeah. It's a different thing when the person who played the hand actually knows the thought process. It's different than when we're trying to break down other people's thought processes here, which is a different thing, and I think it's fun. But Table Talk, check it out. First one's out now. Maybe the second one. I'm not sure yet.
Just check it out. But
make sure you check it out. Anyway, suggest on Discord. We'd like to have some more hand suggestions, please. Thank you. 25, 50, 50, big blind ante. I'm not sure if this is a small game for Jungleman or if... I mean, I know it's a small game for Jungleman, and that dictates his pre-flop play here and maybe some of his post-flop play, or if it's that the progressive stand-up game is going. But things are a little more loosey-goosey than normal. Do you want to describe the progressive stand-up game for the audience?
Sure.
Jonathan,
it's the same as the normal stand-up game in every way except that you don't end when everyone but one person has won a pot. Instead, you keep going until the last person has won a pot. And every pot that someone wins, they get a marker. And at the end, the person who loses pays out a certain amount for each marker that's out there. And so one person could win 7 pots before another dude wins the last pot of the stand-up game. And they have to pay out 7x to that one player instead of just 1x to that one player, the way the stand-up game normally goes.
Right. So I think the beginning part was a bit confusing of what you said there because it ends at the same time, right? It's when the last player is left, right?
It does not end. No, it does not end at the same time. The last player has to win a pot instead of there just is someone left standing.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's different.
That makes sense.
I'm pretty sure these are the rules, by the way. It isn't like I've studied this, and maybe they even change them pretty regularly, I think, to mess around with. But I'm pretty sure I'm right with all that.
And you think that Hustler's doing this, like, or some version of a higher variance thing pretty much all the time during their streams now, right?
They're doing it a lot, at least. A whole lot. I mean, I don't watch the streams, but I see the highlight stuff, their 10-minute highlight stuff and 30-minute highlight stuff. And often this stuff is happening now. Like, it's very common.
What I said to Jonathan when we were talking about this pre-podcast was, that's fine for these guys who either have a ton of money or are pros and are going to like play this game well. But I think it's probably bad for a poker economy. Like if you're just in some city that has, a medium-sized city with its, little poker economy humming along, this is the type of thing that will crush people and make them unable to participate in the poker economy anymore. Like a certain percentage of people are just going to fall out of the poker realm if you are continuously playing games like this, because it's just adds so much variance and can really break people.
I mean, I don't think they're doing this in most parts of the world. I think this is mostly just for a TV show. But the TV show happens a lot. By the way, I am aware that I'm actually not sure how they end this progressive stand-up game. If they do it when the person wins the last pot or if they're just the last one standing now. I'm realizing that I thought it was one way, but I actually don't know. It doesn't really matter for our purposes.
No. Like for our purposes, we're not like deep into it. There's a couple people who have 2 wins and at least one person who has 1 win. So it's not like we're super deep into it. So it's not a huge factor, but it might inspire some more high variance play.
Yeah.
That's
it's that much more reason not to be the last one holding the bag, right? Because you're paying out more than you normally would have, or in the old days, and each win is a lot.
And each hand that you win is worth more than it would have otherwise been. So it just makes you should bluff more and you should call more. Everything you should get to showdown more frequently. Basically, is the idea. And maybe that colors a little bit of how this hand plays out. Although who knows? It's Hustler Casino Live. There's a lot of loosey goosey play, no matter what's going on. So 25-50 with a 50 big blind ante. Mike X, known for his loosey goosey play, is going to go ahead and limp the hijack with King 8 off. We don't like it. We don't have to talk about it. Jeez. It's a bad play. Mariano is going to be next to act in the cutoff. He's got 89K. He's got everybody covered. He 10Xs it with aces, which is probably a good strategy against these players when the progressive stand-up game is on to go big. Yeah.
I love it.
He's got ace of diamonds, ace of clubs. This is the first of the decisions that's like, even with the progressive stand-up game, are these stakes just too low for Jungleman? Because he calls out of the small blind with 5-3 off.
I mean, I guess he's bored as hell because it makes no sense to do this, right? Like you can 3-bet this hand, but you can't call from the small blind with 5-3 off to a 10X. There's no world where that ever makes sense no matter what, right?
Right, and it's not like the SPR is going to be amazing. He's got about 24,500 to start the hand. Right. So Mike X is always calling, and maybe somebody else calls too. Like the SPR is not going to give you a lot of wiggle room with 5-3 off here with the worst position at the table.
We don't know for sure that Mike X is always calling, like because it's a 10X, but he probably is calling. It's Mike X. But either way, we have 5-3 off. Like, why are we even? We're so desperate to win to get a marker, I guess. But like, why aren't we just 3-betting this then? Like, this clearly is not the optimal way. He's got to be bored to tears.
Maybe. I mean, he has no markers yet. He also is like at risk of being the guy who pays out. So there's something there. I don't know.
Right, but you'd probably 3-bet this, not call, right?
Yeah.
You really want to play this hand 3 ways out of position?
Maybe he thinks Mariano's just going to 4-bet him with relentless no mercy because of the situation.
I mean, that's why you just fold this hand, right? You don't fold this hand at all.
Yeah. Anyway, Jungleman calls.
Okay.
Brown Balla is in the big blind. He's got 25K. He calls with 9-6 off, whatever, also.
Okay. I mean, at least he's getting a price.
Mike X calls also with King 8 off. So Mariano has aces against like just the worst collection of hands that you can imagine. They're so bad. 5-3 off, 9-6 off, and King 8 off. Yeah. Which of these hands is the worst hand in this situation of those 3 hands?
It might be King 8 off, right?
Yeah.
Because King 8 off is the one that's going to get you in the most trouble.
Yep.
Right. You make a good not a good top pair, but you make top pair. It's you could hit a king. That's pretty good. Even an 8 is like not bad. These other guys have smaller hand. Like they're going to make worse top pairs and worse pairs, and then they can make straights at least. Like Mike X has nothing going on except weird 1-pair hands and the miracle 2-pair once in a while, which is then any 2 cards can make 2-pair anyway. So what are we doing? Right.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm going to say King 8 off is the worst.
King 8 off is one of the gutter hands of poker. And
sure.
Well, not in like short stack tournament situations, but in deep stack cash situations.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
I mean, if some people might think I'm an idiot if they're like, what about when you have 10 blinds? Wouldn't you rather have King 8 off? Yes, I'd rather have King 8 off with 10 blinds. Thanks.
Now those
Steve.
people who would have thought you were an idiot based on using that no longer think you're an idiot. So you handled that. Yeah. It's fine.
Yeah.
They're like,
Grant's not I'm slowly turning into Phil Hellmuth as I age. I'm starting to create a they, like that doesn't actually exist. And that they're just always on top of me, always like unfairly shitting on me at all times. And I have to fight back against them because they are doing that.
Right.
Which is really, I think, what Phil Hellmuth believes at this point. He's really convinced himself.
I mean, in fairness, Phil Hellmuth probably in every single YouTube video he's in probably gets lit up in the comments. And every tweet, unlike you don't really get lit up in the same way, right? Like
no, but the they that Hellmuth is talking about is not the commenters. It's like it's whatever group of players he's playing with is somehow like they just keep doing it to me, like true. or the poker gods of variance or whatever,
I mean, he's just unbelievable. Like if he gets coolered, he's upset. If he isn't picking up hands, he's upset. If he wins a small pot when he had he gets upset. Like, how is this real life? All that kind of stuff. It's like, dude, it's entirely real life. You're playing a game based on probabilities, and all these probabilities are going to happen when you play enough hands. You should know this, you idiot. Anyway,
it's all a persona. Who knows? 2150 in the pot.
He's an emotional guy. That's all, really.
He is 2150 in the pot.
Okay.
The most relevant hands we're going to forget about Brown Balla. They're going to be Mike X with King 8 off, Mariano with aces, and Jungleman with 3-5 off.
Yeah.
We got 3-6 King with 2 diamonds. So Mike makes top pair, Jungleman makes bottom pair, Mariano has the ace of diamonds with the over pair.
Yeah.
It checks to Mariano, who bets 1K. Okay. So far, so good. Feeling good about everything.
We want to get called by a king.
All right, Jungleman is in the small blind next to act with 2 players behind. Typically, this is going to be a fold with bottom pair and nothing else really going on.
Yes.
Raising is an interesting idea. I think it's better than calling. What do you think?
100% it's better than calling. We have an interesting card with our bottom pair, right? We have this 5 of diamonds, and it blocks some of the continues for our opponents, right? We block 4-5, we block diamond. That's kind of a cool reason to decide to continue here. And I think as a raise, certainly as a raise is better than as a call. We raise, we sometimes win right now. Sometimes we get it heads up and then can win later. Just keep barreling and win, or pick up some kind of a draw. Although most of the draws we pick up are very questionable. Like a diamond on the turn is not a good card for us, really, right?
It's not a great draw.
Maybe, but like we're not excited about that. So I think that's something to consider. Anyways, blocking some of the continuation of our opponents is pretty cool. So we block bottom set. We have a hand no one would really think we're check raising with, and we block some of the draws.
Yeah, I mean, that's all good. And blocking bottom set is kind of a big deal because you'd think that Mariano is the only player at the table that might have one of the other sets, having played it this way pre-flop, most likely. You'd think maybe Brown Balla could have a middle set,
Maybe Mike X once in a while.
Maybe.
But not too often.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting. And that's what Jungleman does. He makes it 3,800. Obviously, just turning bottom pair into a bluff with some somewhat blockery stuff going on too.
I mean, it's kind of cool because if Mariano has ace queen, and the other guys can have better hands that they're just going to fold a lot, right? Like, what's Mike X even supposed to do, by the way, with top pair no kicker here? Like, is he just? I mean, he's probably just supposed to fold, right?
He's supposed to fold, yeah.
If Brown Balla has 2 7s, he's just going to fold, right? Like. There's good stuff that comes out of this where we can get some better hands to fold for sure. It really just comes down to what does Mariano have. You would think, at least, I should say.
You would think, but of course, Mike X is Mike X, and he has top pair, so he's gonna go ahead and call right away. And I think this brings up an interesting spot for Mariano. Like, do you think this should be a 3-bet some of the time as Mariano here with aces on the king 6-3 with 2 diamonds?
That's a cool question. What's our effective stack here?
Jungleman is the effective stack he started the hand with 24,500.
And Jungleman makes it how much?
3,800.
I mean, we can raise. It's just an equity denying move, right? That's the only real value of this play is equity denial. Like I mean,
is there a world where Mike X has a hand like King Queen where he just calls it off? You know?
Yeah,
because he's Mike X.
Maybe we get money out of Mike X. Like we think we're usually like once in a while Mike X has a set and is just playing it slow, right? For sure.
I haven't watched much Mike X. Do you think he would play a set like this, or do you think he's more likely just to have a one pair hand? Or a draw.
I think he's more likely to have a one pair hand, but I'm sure he'd play a set like this at least some of the time, especially in this game. You know, with the progressive stand up and all that. I'm sure he'll have it some of the time. I've seen him slow play at least some of the time. But he's going to have way more one pair hands than not. Although he did just cold call a bet and a raise on the flop, so now the only one pair hands he has is indeed a king. So we could try and target that.
He's a spewy lag, right? He's just like a spewy lag. Not really
I wouldn't say spewy. He's a stationy lag more than a spewy lag.
And I guess he's not even that aggressive, right? So maybe not even the AG aggressive part.
That's why he's stationy more than spewy, right?
Yeah.
I would be concerned that if we bet Jungleman raises, Mike X calls, and we raise again as Mariano, we might even chase out Mike X's King Queen. Like Mike X just may be like, this is so much heat. Like, I don't know if Mike X is able to think this way or not, but like he should be really aware, like, Mariano raised, reopening the door for Jungleman, like by doing that, which is dangerous, right? Mariano should have King 8 beat, like all the time.
Of course. But I wouldn't be doing it based on Mike X being a competent player.
I understand.
I mean, it's just
I don't know if I don't know if Mike X, but like Mike X may be able to put that one together, is what I'm saying. So I just don't know if we can get called by worse by putting in another raise here. The safe play is clearly just a call. A raise is interesting because it's a pretty wet board. We do have the ace of diamonds, so we block some of the obvious draws that Jungleman can have by having the ace of diamonds.
That was my next thought to talk about is like maybe this is sometimes a raise for Mariano in this situation against these players. Maybe not with a diamond, though. Maybe we need to have the non-diamond aces so that they can have the nut flush draw and we can be trying to get it in against that hand or deny the equity of that hand if they decide not to go with it if it's too many chips to call off.
I mean, on the other hand, coming back to the idea of raising, it's a wet board, and these guys could easily have the kind of hands that are draws that we can just get to fold right now. We shut out all the equity, we get a marker, it's great. Or they decide to call off with their combo draw or whatever, and we're a little better than 50-50, and that's fine too. You know, with all the dead money in there, it's fine.
Yeah, I think with the SPR as it is, like Mike X has like 38K. I'm not so concerned about his range having that many hands that have a speed. I think he mostly is losing to aces, so we're mostly happy to get 38K in if Mike X is willing to do it most of the time. Jungleman obviously can have a speed, but he's also clearly a little bit loosey-goosey eating a sandwich right now. So I don't know. With the SPR as it is, I don't mind getting it in here.
Because you're thinking of Jungleman's SPR. I think it's really reasonable, though, to decide to call here, take a card off, see if one of the big draws comes in. If all the draws miss, we could feel really differently about it than if all the draws don't. Like if the three pairs, I know that actually will make Jungleman trips, but like we wouldn't think anyone would just have a lone three here. The three pairs, that's a really good card for us, and we might decide to move in on the turn because we're like, they're getting it anyway if they have us at this point, right? Like also we get to see what Jungleman does and what Mike X does before we even have to act on the turn, which is pretty cool. So like a brick comes, if Jungleman bets and Mike X raises, we can fold, right? Because now Mike X usually has a set. Or his draw came in, or a two pair, or whatever the fuck Mike X has. But we're usually losing to one of those two guys. If it goes check to us, we can feel great. If Jungleman bets, Mike X folds or hems and haws and calls, and we believe him, we can move in, at least some of the time. So I think I like a call for that reason. Also, we get to put the combo draws in a mathematically bad spot if we wait to the turn for the raise versus getting in against us on the flop. Now they're 50-50 and they're happy to do it. Like we can put them in a spot where it's bad for them to get it in against us. And so either we get to deny their equity or we get to force them to make a mathematical mistake and put in too much money when they shouldn't on the turn. And either way, that seems better. So I think I prefer a call for all those reasons, but you could talk me into a raise. I don't hate it.
Yeah, the reverse of the combo draw thing could be true too, though, because we have the ace of diamonds. So if a diamond does come off, we could be put in one of those kind of weird spots by the combo draw that now has a flush because we'll have the nut flush draw. So like I think I mostly agree that calling is best, especially with the ace of diamonds. I would argue more for the 3-bet if he didn't have the ace of diamonds, but he does, and he makes the call.
Okay.
So this pot has ballooned quite a bit to 13,550. Jungleman has less than that in his. No, he doesn't.
No,
I was
he's
wrong
like
about
20,000.
Yeah, I was thinking ahead. Sorry. The turn is the 7 of clubs. So it is now king 6 3 7 with 2 diamonds and 2 clubs. It's possible that somebody could have picked up clubs with a 6x or 3x of clubs, I guess, but you wouldn't be thinking that much. Mariano does have the club ace also, by the way. Not that it's really that relevant once there's been a check raise on the flop. It's pretty hard. I guess somebody could have ace 6 of clubs and decide to peel one off for 3,800 on the flop.
I mean,
something like
Mike
that.
X doesn't have it, so it'd have to be Jungleman.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway, nobody has it because Mariano has the ace of clubs.
Yeah.
Jungleman now checks. He's shutting down the operation, even though he picked up equity. This 7 does give him a gut shot to go with his bottom pair.
I mean, he picks up equity. He's blocking the nuts as well, which is kind of cool. But I think that Mike X cold call is like, station is not folding. Do not put in lots of money against the station who is never going to fold whatever the hell he has. Like, why would I do that? Like, there's no reason.
Yeah.
He could. So I think we could bet small as Jungleman if we wanted, but betting big seems crazy because Mike X ain't going to fold. We'd have to believe that, right?
It doesn't seem like Mike X is a likely folder with the 1-pair hand that has us in equity jail right now.
Yeah.
And by the way, Mariano called the 3,800 too. He's probably got something, and he might not be folding either. So
yes. So I like a check.
I mean, it kind of sucks. It's because of what happened once Jungleman raised, right? Both of them called, but it kind of sucks that we can hit a card that's like a second tier card for our hand. You know, first tier being a 3 or a 5, and still be unable to bet. Kind of sucks.
I mean, we could go after it. I think if Mike X had folded and only Mariano called, we could decide to try and play a big pot and put Mariano in a really uncomfortable spot with what is almost always 1 pair. Like you assume it's like ace king a lot or king queen or something like that. And Mariano might call us down and he might not, but we also have equity. So you put all that together, it's pretty good. And Mariano really can't raise the turn when the 7 comes in. Like we just have the nuts too much of the time for him to, I think, comfortably raise. But with Mike X cold calling there, I think it's just like he's such a station. You're just burning money to bet.
Yeah, so jungle checks. And Mike X is going to go ahead and take that opportunity to bet 8K with king 8. What do you think about this? King 6 3 7, 2 diamonds, 2 clubs.
I mean, we have to believe Mariano. What is Mariano supposed to have here? Like 2 jacks that he called the flop with, I guess?
I think he's folding that. I think the only thing that we're beating that Mariano has is the nut flush draw.
Yeah, diamonds.
Or 4-5, which we were beating and now are drawing dead against. So not ideal.
I think this is probably a terrible bet with Mariano behind us. If it was just jungle, and he check raised and then checked, we could decide to bet to charge the diamonds. But with Mariano behind us too, first of all, for 8K, Mariano's not folding the nut flush draw anyway. If we check to him, he's probably betting the nut flush draw. So nothing is really accomplished by betting here, except sometimes we might get blown off our hand, or just be putting money in bad. Like sometimes if it checks through, we almost always have the best hand. If Mariano bets, we don't know where we're at, but we're probably going to call and figure it out, as best we can as Mike X.
I mean, once Mariano overcalls, at that moment, we should know that we almost never have the best hand unless we hit an 8, most of the time.
Jungleman could be screwing around, and which he was, as it turns out, and Mariano can have the diamonds. Not diamonds, just diamonds. But that is it. You are right. I guess he could have 4-5 himself, but he just got there if he had 4-5. That's not much. You're right. We usually do not have the best hand. Once he calls, we're like, fuck. All his made hands are beating us, and mostly he's got made hands here, right?
It's like Mike is in this world where he's deciding to put them both on diamonds right now or something like that. I don't exactly know.
I guess you could make a questionable argument that Mike, by betting 8K, defines Mariano's hand a little bit. Although Mariano's going to call with the nut flush draw. It's not like he's going to fold.
There's what hands does Mariano go call fold for 8K here? Like I can't really think of what they are because obviously 4-5 gets there. I don't think he has other straight draws that turn into one pair or anything like that. He's probably just getting rid of those. He either has a superior king, pocket aces, or a flush draw, like pretty much always, right? Or 4-5.
I think you're right. I mean, I guess he could have a set that he just decided to call the flop with once in a while too, but that doesn't help us. That's bad. Yeah. I don't think Mario's ever folding if we bet, and we usually don't have the best hand when we bet. Yeah. And if we do have the best hand and we check, he's probably going to bet anyway. Maybe he won't, by the way. And if he checks, we can know that, Mario probably has diamonds if he checks. But he's probably going to bet diamonds a lot anyway on the turn. Yeah.
Obviously, we shouldn't be in this spot in the first place, but once we're here, we don't like the bet. I think it's probably a pretty bad bet. Anyway, Mike bets 8K. It's not comfortable for Mariano with aces, but I don't think you can fold against a guy like Mike when Jungleman has seemed to shut it down here.
I mean, the only thing we're losing to, I guess Mike can have 4-5 and Mike can have a set. Yeah. But Mike clearly can have top pair. And it's a relatively cheap bet. It isn't like he bet 1.5 times the pot here. Jungleman is unlikely to be check raising a second time. He's usually just going to continue when that 7 comes in. Usually, I think, because he'd be so worried it's going to check through, right? If he's got 4-5 or something like that. We don't know if we're beating Mike X or not, but we're going to have to worry about that later because right now we have, I think, a pretty clear call against Mike X, unless we know he's so tight that he's never calling one pair on the check raise, but clearly that's not the case.
We obviously know that's not the case. Yeah. I think it's another time to ask the question if Mariano should take an aggressive action here. Like, should we just shut out whatever equity Jungleman might have? Maybe Jungleman's shutting down like a low diamond operation here and is going to overcall with 2 low diamonds. And if we move in, obviously he's not going to.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think we have to assume that Mike X is going to fold all his worse hands than ours if we move in. So once again, we're back to sort of equity denial. That's what this play is. So the pot's going to have something like 20K in it or something, right? After Mike X's 8K bet?
Yeah, 21.5.
Right. And Mike X has how much back? Like 30?
After he bets, it's like 28, something like
28. Okay. So we're going to have to put in like 36 to win this 20 and lock out all the stuff. And anytime we're called, we're probably almost dead, right?
Well, that may or may not be the case with Mike X. We don't know for sure.
But I think we shouldn't assume that Mike X is going to call with his one pair of hands if we move in here. I don't know. Yeah, maybe he will. If Mike X is going to call with those, if he's calling with those hands, we should definitely move in.
I haven't seen enough Mike X to know for sure, but like the little snippets I have seen when we're doing him for this show is like, well, he might be the type of guy who's going to call with one pair here.
You know what? It's true. And really, when Mariano moves in here, you would think he's got you think aces is not the hand I would necessarily be putting him on when he moves in. I'd be putting him on stronger and weaker hands, right? So all the nut flush draws may decide just to move in. I think they wouldn't. In reality, I think they would call the 8K and not move in. But I could see someone talking themselves into, he has a lot of nut flush draws here.
Yeah.
How are we even in this hand with King 8? What have we done to ourselves? We just made our life so bad.
Anyway, Mariano takes the easier path and the more common path, I think, and calls.
Yeah, that seems fine.
Here's something to discuss. Jungleman also calls.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Okay, so when Mariano only calls, we're pretty sure Mariano has one pair, tops, right? So that's good.
Usually, yes.
Almost
but
never
we're losing.
What'd you say?
But we're losing.
Of course we're losing. We know we're losing. But but we're pretty sure Mariano has one pair. So the question is, what do we think about Mike X? Right? Do we think Mike X has one pair or not? Because if Mike X has one pair, we're getting the right price to call with all of our outs, right? We have 3s, 4s, and 5s, I believe, right?
I mean, if we have those outs, right? Like you were just advocating for Mariano to just call with the nut flush draw in this spot.
Good point. Good point.
Like that nut flush draw could come with some like stuff that would chop with Jungleman. You know, it could have, I guess not, because Jungleman has the 5 of diamonds. That changes it. But still, it's a pretty precarious spot. If both players have one pair, we're calling 8K to win 29.5. We have, I guess we can count 5s as outs most of the time.
I think we
like
should.
Usually a 5 is going to win.
Usually.
So we have
call it 2 5s instead of 3. We'll remove one of the 5s. So you've got
So we
4
have
plus
8
another
outs.
4. So you have like 8 outs, but one of those outs is a diamond, which makes it like the 4 diamonds a little questionable. So call it like 7 outs probably is a reasonable
Yeah, because
way to think of it.
it is the king of clubs out there. Mariano or Mike X could have king X of diamonds.
Yep.
So let's say in the good scenarios we have something approaching 15% equity.
Okay.
Do we have the right odds to call 8K to win 29K?
Well, that wouldn't be enough. We need to know that we're going to make money on the river. And there is a problem, which is any of our improving cards is scary as hell for everyone else if we suddenly show up and like put money in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if a 3 comes, we could decide that one of those 2 guys probably will bet that pretty confidently, like not thinking anyone can just have a random 3, right? Like between the 2 of them, like I think if the 3 pairs on the river and it goes check, like Mike X doesn't bet, Mariano's going to bet his aces, I think. Try and get value from Mike X, right?
Yeah.
So there is implied odds there on the 3, but the 4 and the 5, probably not. Like I could see Mariano being like, I don't know if I can really get called. This is so thin. We're 3 ways. I'm just going to let's just take it down, man. Let's just check and find out if we won. Like why mess around here?
Yeah. I'm not sure if this should be a call from Jungleman.
This goes back to, I think he doesn't care a lot.
Yeah.
I think that's like
that's part
messing
of it.
around. Why is he even in this? Both these guys, him and Mike X, shouldn't be in this hand. But Jungleman has no excuse. Jungleman knows he shouldn't be in this hand and is doing it anyway because whatever. He's nothing. His phone doesn't have a good enough Google News update or something.
Right. I agree because like when we talked about that 15% equity, that was in kind of the rosy scenario that we're in now, where like there are scenarios where we're drawing dead against one of these players. Or close to dead.
Well, not dead, but close to dead. You
Yeah.
assume no one has a straight right now, right?
Yeah.
That seems
close to dead.
But close to dead.
Yeah.
We might have 3 outs.
Yeah.
To not being dead. That's not good at all.
No. So yeah, I don't think this is a good call. But I think it's just loosey goosey jungle time.
I mean, Jungleman is clearly not playing his A game, at least. I mean, just not playing his A game right now, and that's okay. But I do think, sometimes you and I talk about some of these other players and about like how good they are or not. And one of the aspects of it is like, I'll say, well, I've seen that guy play a lot of terrible hands, and you'll say that about certain players too. And we'll be like, but I've also seen him play good hand, play well. Yeah. And it's like, okay, but how often... the frequency that we play our A game versus not our A game is part of how good a player we are, right? And if we're going to get bored, that matters too. I mean, I guess if you're playing 1 cent, 2 cent, it doesn't matter, right? Like it's it's like playing play money. But this isn't play money. This is like Jungleman has $25,000 in front of him. It's not like zero. He does care a little bit about that money. I think at least a little. So like this says something to me about Jungleman and that he's at least capable of this. Like I don't know if Andrew Roble is capable of this. Maybe he is, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I'm not capable of this.
I don't know what the equivalent to Jungleman is for us, but like when I play 1-2, which is the lowest stakes I play live, it's like I still try and I still care. I'm trying to win money. Yeah.
There's no stake that I'm not trying my absolute hardest all the time, I think. Like I just always want to win everything I can possibly win. That's how I'm built.
There are stakes where I'm not trying my hardest for sure. 5 cent, 10 cent games in the past when we would have done like with friends 5 cent. I've lost $140.
I understand. Yes, I once called 100 big blind shove by you after I made it 3 blinds with King Jack off, and I called because you made it $10 all in, and I called because I'm like whatever. Fair enough, but okay, those are not real stakes. So those aren't stakes that we play with any frequency, right? Yeah, and that amount of money doesn't change anything in our lives ever. Right?
Yeah.
And I don't believe that $25,000 has no meaning to Jungleman the way $10 has no meaning to me. I don't believe that.
That's fair. And I think your point about how often you're playing your A game is a really good point. And I think that's one of the hardest things in poker is maintaining a high level game when you play lots of hours, Like I've been playing long cash sessions, like 10 to 12 hour cash sessions most of the times that I play cash these days. And I've gotten a lot better at it, but it's hard to stay on top of it and like actually focus and pay attention and do a good job for that entire 12 hours. There's definitely a point where I drop off a little bit, even now that I've gotten better at it, where it's like I'm a little bit more on autopilot at this point. It's tough to be playing my A game at this point.
Sure.
Whereas like earlier I would have made a play and I'm like, I just don't have it in me right now to make this play. I can't do it right now. You know that feeling. But I don't know how to like train for playing your A game more of the time. There's obviously emotional control, which I think I have really well. But when I get a little tired mentally, that's when I start to not play my A game. I mean, I don't know what other elements go into it besides emotional control and like how tired you are. What else do you think is a factor in what game level you're playing?
I mean, I think there's a few things. One of them is just not allowing yourself to play your C game ever. Meaning, like, if you find yourself in C game mode, stopping, like not continuing to play poker, like getting up or knowing how to change it. I think what happens for most people is though they find themselves in C game mode or F game mode and feel it, but just stay at the table anyway, right? And so now they're just playing their F game for however long. And like, I think it's one thing to know how to change it, which is challenging and maybe almost impossible for most people. Like when you're not there, I did learn how to like not go on tilt at one point. You know, I taught myself how not to go on tilt almost ever. You know, it took a long time, took like a year, but I did figure that out for myself, and that was very helpful. So like I had much less like D and F game because of that. But if I find myself playing that way, which once in a while I find myself making plays that I'm like, even as I'm putting the money, I'm like, this is probably not right. You know, this is probably too wide or whatever it is. You know, this is probably too crazy what I'm doing right now. The thing I try and do is note that and then sort of give myself an immediate ultimatum of like, change what you're doing or leave the table. Those are your two options. Like pick one, do it now, you know? And like, it's okay not to change, but then I just stop playing.
Yeah. I mean, in a cash game that works. In a tournament, you can't really do anything about that.
Correct.
You also can't really do what I would suggest next, which is what works for me actually is just like getting up and going to the bathroom, even if I don't have to go to the bathroom, just a way to like walk away from the table and come back, just kind of a little reset. That helps a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you could apply that to tournaments with what I'm saying, right? Change what you're doing or leave the table. You could walk around for 10 minutes, come back and try and clear your mind and sort of like refocus. And like physically forcing yourself to do something different means you're prioritizing your sort of mental state and like how well you're playing. Because if you stay at the table, the message you're really saying to yourself even is like, it's not that important that I change this from where it is. It's more important to play this hand badly or whatever the next future hands poorly for me, rather than like not play any hands and actually get myself to the point where I'm playing well. So like, I think that kind of thing actually helps too.
It's kind of like submitting to entropy versus fighting back almost.
It sort of is. It sort of is. Yeah.
Because I've felt myself, submit to entropy at the poker table and just like continue to play when I think I'm making autopilot decisions. And I think it manifests most for me as like me playing hands in a way that are typical, but I know are wrong, because I want a hand outcome to be a certain thing instead of actually analyzing what's going on and making what I think is the right play. It's like, I want this to go this way. And it usually does for people when they make this play, but I think I'm wrong this time, but I'm going to do it anyway because I want more chips basically. And that's how it manifests as me not autopiloting.
Right.
Anyway, who knows what Jungleman's autopilot is or what type of pilot is in the seat, but it seems like not the A game for Jungleman here when he overcalls with the 5-3 and the pre-flop part too.
At least he's consistent. He's been doing this the whole hand.
Was fine. The flop was fine, I think.
Fine.
Check raising the flop was fine.
It was fine, but probably it's mostly a fold, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to reality here. King 6-3-7, 2 diamonds on the flop, second club on the turn. Jungleman with 5-3, Mike X with King 8, Mariano with aces of diamonds and clubs. $37,550 in the pot. Jungleman's got $12,225 in front of him. The river is the 4 of diamonds. Jungleman makes a straight with his 5, and somehow nobody has a flush. What a life it is to be Jungleman.
Yeah.
He's got to just put the rest in, right? He's got a third of a pot. You just have to hope. You can't let them check behind at this point, even though diamonds come in.
I mean, we're paying off diamonds anyway, right?
Yeah.
I guess we could check. Mike X could move in and Mariano could move in behind him and we could decide to fold. But like that's about the only scenario. We're always calling if one person moves us in, 100%, right? We have a blocker, we have a straight, we don't have enough money. The price is going to be way too good. The only reason to check is if we think we can get someone to decide to bluff on this scary board. Will someone bluff on this scary board? I don't believe Mike X will. Mike X bet the turn. Mike X has something. He cold called the raise on the flop. He bet the turn. He's got something. Why would he bluff? There's not a lot of reason for him to bluff. So now Mariano has to bluff. But Mariano should either have the flush or a made hand that doesn't need to bluff either.
Right. Mariano either has the flush or aces or a good king.
Right. So we have to move in because of those reasons, like you're saying.
Yeah. So he bets 12,200, leaves himself 25, a little cheeky, keeping the 25 back. Okay. Mike makes a good play and folds. He folds the king 8. That's good.
I mean, my God, of course. Look at the board has gotten insane.
All right. This is shitty for Mariano. It's 12,000 to win 49,000.
Okay.
So the price is quite good.
Yeah.
We have the ace of diamonds in our hand. Aces with the ace of diamonds. So we know that Jungleman doesn't have the nut flush.
Right.
But with the loosey-goosey nature of this game that's probably been going on for a while, we can expect that Jungleman has plenty of other diamond combos that are possible. You would expect Jungleman to play diamonds this way a lot of the time. Check raising the flop.
Sure.
Kind of shutting down and realizing equity once he gets called in 2 spots. That's all reasonable, right?
Yeah.
You might not put him on a 5 that often. You wouldn't really think there's too many 5s in his range. Maybe something like 6-5 of clubs. Something like that. Where
I mean, maybe, but probably
you'd
not.
really expect him to bet the turn with hands like that, but we kind of expected him to bet the turn with the hand that he has a decent amount of the time when he picks up equity.
Remember we talked about, though, Mike X's, when Mike X cold calls
that's
on
true.
the flop, like there's no fold equity.
That's
so I don't
true.
know that he is
That's
betting
true.
any of those hands.
6-5 of clubs might just have enough equity to bet anyway.
Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a tough spot for Mariano because the price is amazing, obviously.
Amazing.
We have the blocker, but what bluffs does Jungleman have here into 2 players?
All I can think of is that Jungleman has a hand like King 10 off of what we can beat, right? King 10 off, and now it's like the river comes and he's like, oh, I probably was losing, but I was getting a good price to call on the turn. This is the kind of card that everyone hates, unless Mariano has the flush, of course, which he totally can have, Mariano, 100%. But if he doesn't have the flush, maybe I can just get these guys to fold if they have better kings than me, which they probably do. That's the only thing I can come up with. That's the only hand, and that's sort of turning your King 10 and turning top pair into a bluff. I can't think of any other hand that Jungleman could even have that we should be able to beat with one pair, with aces, right?
I mean, maybe if Jungleman has something like 5-8 of clubs.
6-8?
No.
6-8?
6-8 of
turns
clubs.
Middle pair into a bluff. But why does he check call the turn? He wouldn't check call the turn with 6-8. That's why you get
clubs.
5-8, right? Yeah, 5-8.
6-8 of clubs.
6-8 of clubs. Okay, that's how he can call the turn. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then he has to believe that he's going to get these guys to fold, getting 4-1, fold a hand like top pair, which I don't know. We're saying like what's Mariano supposed to do here with his aces. So it's maybe he thinks he could do it.
All right. So does Mariano win at least 20% of the time? Is really
That's
the question he's asking.
I don't know. We have the ace of diamonds that does block some of the combos. We're obviously folding 2 black aces here, right? We're folding anything that doesn't have a diamond in it easily.
Probably.
Having the ace of diamonds does block some of the combos that beat us, but it's still hard to think of almost any hand except when I'm stretching, and maybe you're stretching with 6 of clubs or King 10 off, maybe King 10 of whatever. But like we're really working hard to come up with any combos that he would decide to play this way. I don't even know that he's going to turn top pair into a bluff anyway. King 10 may be good enough to check and hope it checks through, and maybe you win sometimes, right? Hard to believe you win. But you might not think you have enough fold equity to go for it.
I mean, it might just end up being a distribution question, right?
Yeah.
Because it's Jungleman. We're not going to be able to like perfectly analyze his range and understand him, even if he's not playing his A game. He's better than Mariano. Mariano knows that.
Yeah.
So Mariano's, if he's using distribution, where does this fit? I guess is the way
pretty
to do
high
this.
up. It's pretty high, right? Like,
I guess because of the ace of diamonds, but we do have a lot of nut flushes ourselves. We have like
true.
As played a decent amount of nut flushes. We don't have that many straights.
We have some nut flushes, but we probably turn some of our nut flushes into 3-bets on the flop also.
Yeah, that's true.
Not all of them, but especially with the nature of the stand-up game and how much money Jungleman had and all that, I could see him being like, let's just go. Like, let's raise right now. And sometimes I win right now. Sometimes I'm happy to get it against other worse diamond draws. That's fine. If he has a made hand, I have outs. It's whatever. You know, I could really... obviously, he's not always going to do that, but he's going to do that a fair amount of the time, I think.
Mariano also has maybe every king X of diamonds. He might go down to king deuce of diamonds pre. I'm not sure, but
yeah,
if he that's right. Also a lot of hands that are clearly ahead of this hand in distribution.
Yeah,
this hand might be above sets because of the blocker. I'm not sure.
I think it is.
Yeah,
Jungleman's never doing this with 2-pair, right? He's never
if this hand's above sets, in distribution, I think it probably has to be a call. If we only have to win 20% of the time.
I mean, again, we're gonna put in more money with our sets a fair amount of the time before the river.
True.
At least on the
That's
turn,
true.
when Mike X bets 8,000 with our set, we're probably moving in on the super wet board, even though 4 or 5 gets there. We're like, we have outs. Jungleman usually doesn't have it. Mike X rarely has 4 or 5. Like, whatever. Like, let's not just let them get there for free. You know, we have a few sets. We don't have that many.
But still, we only have to win 20% of the time.
I know.
If we can just find a few hands below this. I mean, we have the other aces. We have like ace, king, queen, and other aces that have no diamonds in them. Those are all below this.
We have king jack also.
So that's enough. That's enough to get this to a call if we only need to win 20% of the time.
Yeah, I think you're right. Also, we have to believe as Mariano that Jungleman's going to find bluffs where most people can't, right?
Yeah.
He's Jungleman. Jungleman values GTO, values solver work, all that kind of stuff. Jungleman probably is going to stretch to find a bluff, even in this spot where maybe most of the world can't have a bluff. Jungleman probably can at least have some bluffs. I don't know if he can have 20% of the time bluffs, but he can have some. So it makes, when we have the ace of diamonds in our hand, it probably makes it at least not unreasonable to call here. It may be a bad call. We may be losing money by calling, but probably not a huge amount. And so if it's close, it's probably okay to call anyway. Also, don't forget there's the bonus of the marker too. So there's a little extra, not a lot, but there's probably a few $100 extra thrown in. I mean, whatever, but that may make up for the EV loss if we're calling and losing money anyway.
I'm not convinced it's an EV loss. It might not be.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Mariano makes the call. It feels like you're losing most of the time, which, you know, when you're making a call when you only have to win 20% of the time,
you should be.
It's okay if you feels like you're losing. That's just how it is sometimes, right? And then the guy turns over the better hand, and you're like so sure that you were never winning. That's how it always feels.
Isn't it an incredible feeling though when you make the call, getting that unbelievable price, and you're like, I always lose here, and then you don't lose, which you know happens about the right percentage of the time, at least in my experience. You know, I'm like, it's $25 to win 240. All right, I call. I don't know how I win. I often say, I do the thing where I put the money close to them, or I say I never win, and I put the money in, and then once in a while I'm like, oh my God, I did win, you know, and I'm like really happy and surprised.
Yep.
It's a great feeling.
Yep. But as we know from poker time for many years, it only matters if you win or lose the hand, right? It doesn't matter how much money. So that's what.
Oh no, of course, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the feeling you get because you made the call, and you only made the call because of the odds. But no, it's only about the W's and the L's, baby. Not about the dollars.
Of course. Poker time references. Always topical.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, Mariano loses. That's how Jungleman made a lot of money with 5-3 offsuit and probably didn't care.
So annoying as Mariano, though, to be like, I 3-bet. No, I didn't. But I 10x'd it. I 10x'd it, man. Like, come on. You call from the small blind with 5-3 off. Come on. I know you're bored, but
man.
Come on, dude. Really? You had to cost me this. I was going to win a huge pot against Mike X, and instead I lose a huge pot to you. That sucks.
Yeah. And this money, I think, matters to Mariano. You know?
Oh, yeah. I think it does.
More than it does to Jungleman.
He wins a lot in these games, but I think this money matters to him.
Yeah. And that's just too bad, you know? It sucks.
Music is my sunlight, and all I need is one mic, and I can show every single MC how it's done right. Every time I come by, I'm bound to leave them tongue-tied. I'm sipping on liquor, a quitter is what I'm not. We got one life, and I took a minor break, but I'm back to claim the throne. And gonna be traveling the globe, and still have time to make it home. And you gonna